The views and opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the company, owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
It's Tuesday, the 25th day of May, 2021. Welcome to the Daily Hour, brought to you by Medical House One Communications in Lindos. I'm Jamal Hartman, along with Jackie Lambert. Thanks for making us part of your daily routine. If you're watching online, share the link. If you're on Facebook, start that watch party. If you're on Twitter, retweet it. If you're watching on Channel 82 or listening on the Full 100 radio station, call someone up. Let them know that we're on. Just get the conversation out there to your network, and don't forget to like and engage with us. A good one today as Debi Rivers stops by from Scars for another important conversation, so you don't want to miss out on this. The Daily Play is a Remember When, so a bit of history for Jackie today, and it's not that far back. It's not that far back. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to give much away. So look, Jackie, as I was saying to you and Leanna before we came on, I was ill prepared for the conversation this morning because I was out late last night at the hockey game and I was tired. But the crazy thing is, I shared a video. If you see the video, you'd be like, how could anyone be tired in that atmosphere? It was crazy. It was like
electrifying.
Yeah. it was nuts. And I think they said that's the first game the Panthers have won in a very long time at a playoff game at home. So it was interesting. I'll say this much before we get into today's topic. I'll say this much. I used to think this about the NFL, the American version of football. I used to be like, I don't think I grew up with people with the temperament that could play this sport. And when I look at hockey, how physical it is and so on, I don't think I grew up with people with the temperament that can literally like take a hit in the face and just keep playing the game like nothing happened. It's strange to me how they react. I don't necessarily know the rules of hockey. I'll be honest.
I thought they got put in timeout when they got in fights. Oh, well, then the whole team will be on timeout, so maybe not.
He said timeout. So cool. Let's hope Bob is tuned in, because Bobby can help us. She's a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan. That's going to be my team if the Panthers get out just because of Bobby. But they go in the box for a power play, which means the other team gets 2 minutes of one man advantage if it's only one player. So it's an interesting game. I just want to know the rules about fighting and how suspensions work. I'm learning on the job. So patience with me, folks. So let's move to today's conversation. So on the weekend, some things happened in Bermuda, Jackie. Did you hear about the 4-star situation? All right, so here we go, folks. Let me just share with you,
because I found out on Twitter, so you know how Twitter goes.
That's where I first looked. I want to say I first saw something on Twitter, but I didn't know what it was about. So I went in my group chat and said, what's everybody talking about 4-star? So what I'm going to do first is so everyone gets an understanding, because this is crucial. And this goes back to episodes where we had Teresa Stewart on, and we were talking about checking your finances at the end of the month. And she, we had these conversations more than one occasion on this show. But Mariko Thomas, who's the owner of, I think it's called Thomas United Limited, which is the parent company of 4-Star and Glaze Bakery, on Marge List on May 21st, he says, "Good day. Please see a very important statement regarding 4-Star and Glaze Bakery below." And he says, "Dear valued customers," and I'll try to make it as short as possible, folks, for those who've seen it. "Let me first thank you for your support of our business over the years, and in particular during these challenging times. Exceptional customer service and engagement is the foundation of our business, and you're the most important, blah, 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 blah. All that good stuff, right? So then he goes on. Some of the transactions authorized at certain 4-star locations, Flat, Somerset, Warwick, and Glazed Bakery on Church Street in Hamilton, were not fully processed, right? The payments. We are more than willing to provide you with an in-depth technical details of the failure, but essentially there's a 2-part process to the credit card transactions. Number 1, authorization and confirmation is received from your financial institution that there are sufficient funds to proceed and process the transaction. And 2, the authorized funds are subsequently withdrawn from the account for payment, which concludes the transaction. He said, unfortunately, between December 31st, 2020 and February 7th, 2021, the authorized funds for approximately 10,000 of our customers was never withdrawn from their accounts. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And Mr. Thomas was very apologetic. And he even shared the statement from Global Payments, who, told them about the recent issue, right? Here's my question. How does everyone feel about this situation? Like, what's your first thought when you hear about this situation involving 4-star? What, are you mad at the company? Are you mad at yourself? Like, did you look at your statement to say, oh man, I haven't been charged, let me call the company? Or do you feel it's their responsibility? Do you feel that months later they should just give everybody a pass? Or do you say, no, this is business, they should be able to collect the money that's earned with them? It's not their fault as per se. What are your thoughts? What do you think? It's a messy situation with 4-star. Jackie, I know you have an opinion on this.
At first I was like, ooh, this is about to be messy. But then at the same time, it was during a weird time of the year. Everything was up in, flames, and you went, you ordered a pizza, you got your stuff, and you're expected to have a certain amount deducted from your card. Mm-hmm. I don't know about everybody else's account, but I always have money on hold. So I'm always waiting for the accurate balance of my account. So I don't think it's that big. To me, I don't think it's that big of a deal that you just go back, you check your statements, you weren't charged, boom, the money is owed. You got a service, you owe. Sometimes it takes longer for money to be processed. I don't know. I just don't see it as a big deal. They deserve the money. They can't go for a loss. They're already taking a hit with the pandemic and the shutdown as it is, and you want to take another hit. And I know some people are saying, oh, well, shouldn't insurance cover that? And I'm just like, why, if you got the service, you knew that you were supposed to pay, you didn't get charged, now's the time to get charged. It wasn't 4-star's fault. It was somebody else's fault. Unless they want the big people to take it, but then that's a different story as well.
He did share that. Bobby says, solid win for the Panthers last night. Shout out to my Leafs. And happy belated anniversary to you and your hubby, Bobby. Yeah, 5 years, I believe. Happy belated. Teresa Stewart says, listen, if 4-star even thinks about charging me, there will be problems. All their transactions for me were processed and drawn from my accounts. I want no parts of these shenanigans.
So she checked and she was charged. She should absolutely have an attitude.
4-star, don't mess with Terry. She's been on this show. She checks her account. She knows what she's doing with her money. That's not the one to do it with, 4-star. You'll see her before, what's that judge name? You'll see her before one of those judges, I'm telling you. David Michael Wilson says, how does one go months without recognizing that you haven't been paid? Well, that's a question. That's a legit question. Obviously these companies have accountants and so on, but then the other part can be said to others. Well, how do you go months without realizing that it hasn't been taken out of your account? Right? Yeah. Chocolate Lovely Line says mistakes happen, and this indeed it's something that, for the most part, it's human. It's human. For companies are still run by humans. As much technology as that's involved in it, they're still run by humans, right? Kendra Lee Pyramid Jack.
I write every transaction down and reconcile at the end of the month.
Yeah, I wish I was that responsible.
I'm not.
But that's exactly how we protect ourselves in these cases, though. What Dr. Pierman's saying is what we should be doing every time we expense. It takes 2 minutes out of your day. Just write down what those expenses are. So when this happens, you can say, well, I have money in my account for that because I know that I ordered $50 worth of pizza on February 11th, regardless if it's June, whatnot. You just know that. So tracking your expenses is important. It's important. Sam Cat Place, it happens. Just need to check and reconcile receipts more often. Otherwise, no biggie. Indeed. Kivani Haynes says, if you swipe your card, you should pay it. Yeah, no, I that's where I'm at. I haven't even shared my perspective, Jackie, man. But no, and let me say that I see nothing wrong with the company pretty much charging people for what they agreed to pay. I don't. I see nothing wrong with that. I do understand the frustration of people, but at the end of the day, you still paid for something. You paid for a product or service, and well, you agreed to pay. Sorry, you agreed to pay for a product or service, and so it's only right that regardless of the hour when it happened, you should be able to pay them when it happens. Now, let's look at another side of it, there, Jackie. Let's say you were working then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now you're out of luck and just don't have the finances, and maybe you ordered pizza more than once from there, and your bill could be, pretty up there, right? Some people may say, is that still fair? And then I think it comes right back around to what Dr. Pierman said about tracking our expenses. Yeah?
Yeah.
So. Nachiko Trotjack.
I think the banks also need to update their system. As in the US, I can see details about items that are on hold, i.e. merchant, amount, etc.
Oh, yes. So
ours just says how much is on hold. It doesn't say from where for what.
Yeah, with my Bank of America, it actually tells me, it breaks down everything that's on hold. With HSBC Bermuda, it doesn't necessarily do that. That's maybe something that we can suggest to HSBC. I think that that would be helpful, because in a situation like this, someone could probably, again, that's a good point. They can see that something's on hold and it could be there for a long time and just not know what it could be. So there's a lot of solutions to this on all ends. Amanda Kelly Jack.
I would have contacted them if the charge didn't go through. It's a moral issue for me.
Makes sense to me, Miss Amanda. Chocolate Lovely Lines, it seemed out of their control, but we can't expect them to not get paid for service goods rendered. Michelle White says it sounded more like people were with no money, or so if it's up to people to keep money in their account. And PL Brockington says, if you check your account, you would have noticed that those funds did not come out. Pay your bill. I think that's the consensus. I think most people would agree with that. Deborah Leo Joel Beljack.
If you receive the product/service, you should have budgeted for the debt. This is often a delay in the debiting of accounts, especially during this period. Indeed.
Bobby Singh says, my first thought is their bank account must be padded if they didn't notice payments from 10,000 customers. In all seriousness, my firm had same issues with global payments. They have taken over the credit card transactions and postings from HSBC. Deb Ford says, good morning, everyone. Anyone else on Facebook having issues? I'm not picking up anything. Deb, go to our YouTube channel if you're having challenges. Check us out. We are on YouTube as well. So sorry about that. Janaea Pereira Edna says, what about those in financially tight spot who might have had the funds at the time but don't have funds now? People have the money planned out for certain things. It just throws everyone off. And that's why I mentioned earlier, like, Janaea, I agree with you. There are people that may have been doing well back in December and January, and then their circumstances could have changed. So I definitely take that point. I take that point. That's good. Here's our resident financial guru. BNTB does now show you what is on hold for both debit and credit card transaction. Oh, that's great. That's great. So now, you know what? We can always ask HSBC, is it something that they're going to be considering? That it might be helpful. So these are why we have these discussions, so that we can make these changes that make it easier for us, the customer, as well as the business. Sean Smith, I reconcile my family accounts once a week against my receipts. Rick Olson says reconciliation of business accounts has changed tremendously. Kishana Peniston says Butterfield tells you what is on hold and pending. All right, so Butterfield does it. That's great. Manuela John says, I may not know exactly how much, but if I use my card at a specific business, I look for it in my statement. All right. And Charles H. Jeffers II says, if I'm 4-star, I will cover the cost for any overdraft fees incurred due to this. That right there is something that I didn't consider. But that goes back to what Janae Edna said, right? So let's say, Jackie was doing great, working, great job back in January, February, and she's been hard up since March, doesn't have the funds, and let's say they do process the transaction and it creates an overdraft fee. That would be in good faith by 4-Star. So that's an excellent suggestion. But I did think I read that in Mr. Thomas' statement that they would be point 2, the authorized funds are subsequently withdrawn from the account for payment, which concludes the transaction. I thought I read somewhere where it'll only do so if the account has funds in it. So I could be wrong. Sam Cat Play says HSBC tells you what is on hold as well. Just need to be more vigilant. I'll have to check my account today. I honestly haven't seen that on HSBC. Maybe are you talking about HSBC Bermuda? I'll legit contact someone from HSBC today just to check. I will check to see if they do that. I definitely have not noticed it.
I don't think so. I don't think my app allows it. Maybe it's the app for me.
I don't have the app. I don't have it. So I'm a bit confused as to, you all are making me want to check my HSBC account now. But here's a quick yes or no question. A quick yes or no question to everyone. Regarding the entire situation with 4-Star and the late payments, right? Do you think, yes or no question, do you think 4-Star, the business, should write this off? Or do you think, yes or no, do you think they should write this off at the 10,000 customers? I'm going to tell you my answer first. I usually wait for you all. No, I think it's business. If you paid for a service or product, you've got to pay it. I mean, even if you're hard up, you can speak to the company about that, right? Reach out to Mr. Thomas. But I think personally, no, I think that at the end of the day, I don't think they should write it off. I think this is something that happens that's beyond the control of the company. Issues happen. So looks like a consensus. No, they shouldn't write it off. Wow, it's a huge consensus. A lot of no's. All right. So look, on that note, we're going to go to, let me bring Lee into the conversation, just see if she has an opinion. Hey, Lee, how are you? You got us? Oh, you're on mute. You got yourself on mute. Gotta get you. There we go.
There we go. Are we there? Okay. Morning, guys. Morning. Yes. This topic is very interesting because I actually experienced this myself with my cousin over the pandemic holiday, and we had ordered food, and the transaction definitely didn't come out until like months later. And my cousin was like, "What is going on? Like, I had that money, now it's gone." And so I think, you know, it's a 4-Star is like stuck between a rock and a hard place, I think, because, you know, it's not their fault, but, you know, like you said, people are experiencing financial difficulties. It's been a long year, and I'm kind of, it's stuck in the middle.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I feel for Mr. Thomas. I feel for any business who's got to go through this, and I just hope that from a customer's perspective, we understand that we do have responsibilities once we swipe our cards. So, yeah, not a situation we wish to be in as a customer or a business, right?
Nope.
All right, let's go to the news break with Leanna, and we'll be back with Debi Rivers with Scar's conversation, another important convo. So, folks, make sure you share the link, start a watch party, let people know we're on channel 82 and the full 100 radio station. Lee, over to you.
Thanks to Mel and Jackie. I am sending a very good morning to all of our listening audience all around the world. I hope everyone is having a good start to the day. A rainy day for those here on the island, but, you know, we'll get back to that later in our weather update. I'm Leanna Lambert, and it's time for the Daily Hour News Break. Now let's take a look at today's top stories. Many islanders will be able to breathe a little easier after government announced plans to allow a second wave of pension withdrawals for those facing financial difficulties. Now, Minister of Finance Curtis Dickinson was the bearer of what some might say was good news, as people will be able to withdraw up to $6,000 from their pensions come July 1st, supplementing existing regulations. Now, the initiative, which was first announced last year to alleviate hardships felt by families as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak, would last until June 30th next year. However, the minister stated that there would be limitation to pension withdrawdowns, and specifically for those who could show that they were facing financial difficulty. Now, Mr. Dickinson strongly cautioned that only people who had a critical need for emergency funding should apply, saying it was very difficult for people to make up the withdrawals later. To vote or not to vote? That is the question. Between the government and trade unions regarding a controversial new law that proposed letting non-unionized staff vote on whether a workplace should retain union representation. Government confirmed last evening that a mutual understanding had been reached, with both parties waving the white flag for the betterment of the rights of all workers. While the move was well received by the island's unions, which were consulted at the draft stage of the legislation, in the same breath, they also threatened to take strike action if an amendment to allow decertification votes was included in the legislation. Minister of Labor Jason Hayward said after months of discussions, the Trade Union and Labor Relations Consolidation Act 2021 had been accepted with no further amendments being pursued. Now, the BPSU President Arnell Thomas last week stated in order to ensure compliance, all employers will need to make the necessary changes to their current employment contracts and/or handbooks. Those businesses that are unionized will need to make certain that their collective bargaining agreements are in compliance with the new legislation. Meanwhile, the island logged a good Samaritan deed as health officials announced that a total of 9,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine have been shipped to our neighbors in the South, Trinidad and Tobago. Health Minister Kim Wilson claimed that the island had more of the COVID-19 vaccine stockpiled and that it was likely to use before June 30th expiration date. The cargo was shipped by private jet and received by the country's foreign minister yesterday. Minister Wilson stated that Bermuda does expect to use all the supply of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines. Therefore, we were unable to share this one as it had reached the maximum number of times it can be transported as recommended by the manufacturer. Now, turning to weather, today's high is near 75, while the low is near 69 degrees Fahrenheit. You can expect some sunny breaks with a slow-moving showers around the island. A very slow-moving cold front continues to sink towards us from the north. A weak low is expected to become pinched off from the tail end of this front and stall in our area for a couple of days, bringing cloudy skies and occasional wet periods. An improving trend is expected later in the week as the front and associated low pressure gradually dissipates. That's our daily hour news break. Let's head back to Jamal and Jackie in the studio for today's Daily Focus.
All right, Lee, you said the pension was up to $6,000 that people can take?
Yes, $6,000. So we knew last year that people were allowed to take up to $12,000. It seems as if they've halved that, and up to $6,000 people are able to withdraw from this time around.
I'm no financial guru, but what I will say, folks, is if you need it, access it. If you don't need it, don't go out, have a party. That's all. I don't like to give financial advice. I'm not.
That's exactly what the minister was saying.
Yeah, like
that's exactly what the minister was saying. Like, he's strongly cautioning people that only need it for critical emergency use, not for, let's just go showboat and I've got money in the bank now.
Be wise about it, folks, because if we're privileged or lucky or blessed enough to make it to retirement, you don't want to regret that $6,000. It'll go long. Thanks so much, Lee. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
You as well, guys.
All right.
See you later.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Debi Rivers coming on. We're having an important conversation that everyone needs to be a part of.
Mom's celebrating her 70th birthday next month. Have you noticed her age is catching up with her?
Yeah. Plus, she's having a hard time getting up and around like she's used to. I would sure hate to see her fall.
At Medical House Limited, we can help make life situations easier. We have electric beds, motorized scooters, bath stools, walkers, you name it.
Mom's been real good to us. We'll get her birthday and Christmas gifts from Medical House.
Medical House has relocated next to the Dendy Town Field, number 6 Bakery Lane, Pembroke. Telephone 292-3622.
Spring has sprung and it's time for the Friends of Hospice Butterfly Blast annual raffle. Springtime is a great time for a refresh or to start a new project. And with a $1,000 gift card from Gorham's, you'll be able to put a dent in that wish list. There are multiple chances to win, so increase your odds by buying early. The draw date is May 5th for a $1,000 gift card from Gorham's. Check out our Facebook page, Friends of Hospice Bermuda, for details. Prize donated by Gorham's. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
All right, welcome back to the big show. Jackie Lambert, myself, Jamel Hartman. It's the Daily Hour brought to you by Medical House One Communications, Lindo's, and our friends over at Channel 82, where you can stream this and many other locally produced shows 24/7. Just want to let people know, if you want to get to Leanna, got any news tips, hit her up. Just send an email to engage@thedailyhour.com, and she will definitely respond to you. If you have some interest in news, that is. Without further ado, let's bring our guest for the day, Miss Debi Rivers from SCARS. I'm looking forward to this convo. As you know, we've had recently the Coalition for the Protection of Children on with Kelly Hunt. We've spoken about foster care. There's some that remain, and to me, this is just another important conversation along the same line. So grateful that Miss Debi Rivers has agreed to come on this platform and engage with us. So without further ado, welcome to the show, madam. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Good morning, Jamel and Jackie.
Good morning, Debi. Hi, I miss you.
I miss you. Oh my gosh, just the most amazing family. Amazing.
No one enough.
Very well.
I had no idea. Look, I didn't even realize Jackie and Leanna both had the same last name and were cousins. So let alone, like, I could never think you two know each other. I'm just not there, but I'm glad we're family.
We are.
So thanks again for doing this. Let's just get right into it. Speak to the audience. Speak to us about SCARS. What is the purpose of the organization?
Right. Thank you, Jamel. SCARS is a nonprofit. We were born October 27th, 2011. We're about to have our 10th anniversary. We were born out of pain. Our family experienced child sexual abuse. Our mission is to reduce the risk of child sexual abuse in our community and to be a voice and an advocate for children who have been sexually molested, as well as their affected families. It is a painful journey, the journey of child sexual abuse, but the good news is it's preventable.
Indeed, absolutely. And speak to us about who should get SCARS training. Well, first off, what is SCARS training? Like, what does it what is it? And then who should get it? Like parents, coaches, educators, who?
All of the above. So SCARS offers a community training we offer a training to the community, a prevention training that teaches adults how to recognize, prevent, and react responsibly to the issue of child sexual abuse. It is a 3-hour session. We are now offering all of our sessions via the Zoom platform, so it is virtual online learning. It's a training that teaches adults some really important steps on how to protect children. And it really is about making choices and taking a risk and supporting each other when we go through this process and this painful journey of child sexual abuse. And what we have to do is we have to learn the facts about what child sexual abuse is. It's not only penetration. You don't even have to touch a child to be accused of sexually abusing them. It can be inappropriate, viewing of pornography without even touching the child. We have to learn the facts, what really is child sexual abuse, to understand this issue. And then we talk about how to minimize the opportunity. What are the things that we can do, because sexual abuse is preventable. We also go through a section called Talk About It, which is talk to our children early and often about body safety, talking to other adults who cross the boundaries of our children. And then we talk about how do we recognize some of the signs, what signs might indicate that a child is being abused or has been abused. And we talk about those signs in our training, and then how to react responsibly if a child discloses child sexual abuse or you have a reasonable suspicion This is a training that was developed by an organization in the United States called Darkness to Light, and it's called Stewards of Children. And we brought this training to Bermuda and started training our community in May 2012. And since that time, SCARS has educated 11,042 adults in our training, in our prevention training. Wow. And we, because of our amazing corporate and community donors, we offer our sessions at no cost to the community.
Wow.
Free.
Oh, that's amazing. I've done it, so I couldn't remember if we had to pay for it or how it all worked, but the fact that you have sponsors is an amazing thing. And I know you're talking about you recommend everybody do it, but we have some corporations, we have other organizations that are in schools with children. Are you trying to work with them and push them to get SCARS certified versus just recommending it, but actually, forcing yourself on them? Sorry, horrible words.
I hear you. I don't really like to use the word force, because that causes people to actually sometimes do the opposite and say, no, I'm not going to do anything that anybody forces me to do. So we strongly recommend to our youth serving organizations, those that open their doors to our precious children, to educate their volunteers and their employees at no cost. It's 3 hours of their time. And I can tell you, we have a community here in Bermuda that has embraced this. Our Department of Education, the Kalmar Richards and Terry Cox over there, beautiful, and our Minister Dwella Urbane, they recognize the importance of our training, and they mandate our training to every teacher, custodian, even administrative person. It's mandated that all of their staff do the training, and they also have to be recertified every 3 years. It's not because they don't trust the people that work there. It's because they care about the children and the hundreds and hundreds of children that they take care of. The same applies to our private schools, BHS, Warwick Academy, MSA, Summersfield Academy, Saltus. They all recognize the benefit and the value, and when they train their staff and their team, because a child may disclose to one of them. I can tell you that, teachers identify and report more child sexual abuse cases to child protection authorities than any other professional. And that was according to a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services 4th National Incidence on Child Abuse and Neglect. So, we can get right into this topic of this global health crisis. Schools have been closed for most of the last year, and a few months. And that is a concern for children who have been abused, because most reports come from schools. And so, we know that COVID-19 is a global health crisis.
We're getting there. We're going to get.
That's actually my next question. That is actually my next question, because children are stuck at home, and sometimes it's usually a family member or somebody that's close to you that ends up being the predator. So, can you talk to us more about how the risks for sexual abuse on children is higher at this point in time?
Yes, absolutely. Some children, so like you said, sexual abuse, let me just say, thrives in isolation. It's not always a family member, but a large percent can be a family member, a friend of the family. 90% is someone love, or trust that sexually abuses children. High percentage. And we're coming out of a shelter in place. And we know that abuse thrives in isolation. Offenders who gain sexual pleasure from children do not do this in front of other adults. It's their shame. They hide it. It thrives in isolation. So what are the risks during a shelter in place? Well, for some children, they could have been exposed to risk because of having different people caring for them, right? So, for example, their safe and trusted aunt is no longer able to care for them because she's high risk for infection. So the teen neighbor, or perhaps the older cousin, hypothetically, you're right, could be watching them. This could be a teen neighbor or an older cousin who hasn't had any education in boundaries and body safety. That's a risk, right? Or mom or dad is an essential worker, and the child's been left with an inappropriate, unsafe family member or unsafe friend of the family. That's a risk. Someone who has an illness and being sexually attracted to children may be caring for these children. It's a risk. Throughout COVID, children have been spending more time on the internet as usual. And they have not received prevention education, many of them, about online risks, or there were no safety measures really put in place, and perhaps predators have befriended them. I can tell you that there were over 500,000 predators during lockdown looking for children and naked images of children online. They could not get to children. They were in lockdown or they were in shelter in place. How do they fix this illness of theirs? It's like an addiction. So you speak to anybody in cybercrime, this is an increasing problem. So those are just some of the risks that children may have been exposed to during a shelter in place, during a pandemic.
Sorry. So some children may be afraid to talk about the abuse that they've had to endure during the pandemic and, shelter in place. What does SCARS do to assist in this respect? And what can people do to make children feel more comfortable to come forward and talk about their experiences?
Well, that's a great question. What SCARS is doing is really trying to encourage every adult in this community to sit through our 3-hour free training. Because they will learn a lot about recognizing signs. They will learn a lot about talking to their children about body safety early and often. The best protection with our children is our relationship with them and letting them know that they can tell us anything about anyone that makes them feel uncomfortable. Have that open dialogue with your children. And our training, really hits upon that. But in order to understand this issue, we do have to think like a child. Because we always say children are not mini adults. They're just not. And I want you to think about, and your audience to think about, what a child who has been sexually violated during this pandemic may think. This may be a reason why a child may not disclose during this time and during a pandemic. A child might think, my parents are already stressed out from COVID. Or my parent has lost their job and they're really worried. Or my mommy or daddy might have COVID and get sick or die. I don't want to bother them with what happened to me. I don't want to cause them to be more upset, so I'm not going to tell. Or a child might think, I hear and I see all these new rules, and I'm not sure if I should be talking about this right now. What if I get in trouble for telling, right? Remember, we're in a pandemic. This is a child who's been abused. They may think, I've already missed so much school. I don't think I should tell because I really need to focus on catching up with my schoolwork. So they may not tell. Or we're back in school and the child who's been abused might think, my teacher seems stressed. I don't want to make him or her more stressed by telling what happened to me, right? We have to think like a child. Or a little child might think, with social distancing protocols, right? A child who's been abused might think, I shouldn't get close enough to tell my teacher because I don't want to get in trouble, or I don't want to cause them to be ill if I have COVID. Or here's one, what if I tell my teacher and my mommy can't come in the building to be with me? Let's not forget parents weren't allowed in school buildings with COVID protocols, which I was not happy about, I have to say. And that's a scary thing for a little child. We have to think like children. Or I don't know if this coach will be happy or mad if I tell, because I'm not going to be able to see the expression on their face. I mean, we must remember everyone's wearing a mask. Children, they only have eyes to gauge reactions from the adults in their lives. And I believe that COVID is having a devastating impact on many children. They have to be wondering and worried about whether their little world will ever get back to normal. And I worry about the anxiety and this being caused in these little children, the children who can't breathe, the children who suffer with asthma, the children who suffer with claustrophobia. What about the children who are being abused? They're already silenced from telling. The masks may be triggering to them. This is covering their mouth. Remember, it's the most silent crime. Look at the picture behind me. Children don't have mouths. They don't know how to tell, right? I know we as adults feel safe with a mask, but I just hope children will be able to feel safe without them.
Indeed. And
children process different from adults. And I can tell you just what was used on your last segment about, the whole issue with 4-Star Pizza. And I believe it was Leanna who said, we're between a rock and a hard place. Well, we are between a rock and a hard place with this issue and this pandemic. We must protect our vulnerable adults, but at the same time, we must consider and think about the children.
Absolutely. Agree.
So, Debbie, do you ever feel that the people that take this course, like some of them may actually be predators? Do you feel like it's almost like you might be weaponizing the enemy? Like, do you ever have that concern?
Absolutely not. Sex offenders come into classrooms. They do not walk into a classroom with a sign on their head that says, I have sexual thoughts of children. They don't walk into families. They don't walk into political arenas. They don't walk anywhere with that sign on their head. They don't want people to know that they have these sexual thoughts, and many of them suffer with this. So I know predators come into the classroom. We know that at SCARS. We don't know who they are. But I can tell you that we know that. You know how we know that? Because the man who sexually abused me over 40 years ago came into one of my training rooms at Argus, where we do our community sessions, pre-COVID. He came in there because his daughter takes care of children and he was going to be her backup. And I remembered what he did to me many years ago. You might have read it in the newspaper. I went public with my story. I know predators come into the classroom, but we're not going to stop this message. And what it will send to them is, we are watching. We are educating our adults to know what to look out for. Go get some help.
Yeah.
Now, talking about knowing what to look out for, and I know you say sign up, take the 3-hour course, which 3 hours is, I feel like it's enough, because I've done it. It's enough, but it's still, there's so much more education out there for us to take. But can you just tell the audience a few tricks, like a few signs to look out for before they're able to actually take this course? Because I absolutely recommend that everybody takes it, but just a few signs. In a child, yes, in a child.
Yeah. So we know that there are long-term physical and emotional consequences of childhood sexual abuse, and some of them can be post-traumatic stress, can be anxiety and depression. It can be substance abuse. It can be aggression. I mean, you'd be angry too if somebody was abusing you. You might become aggressive. Sexual promiscuity, that's the confusion between sex and love. If I don't have sex, no one's going to love me, right? Because my first experience of sex was somebody who told me I was beautiful. Self-inflicted harm, cutting yourself, that's thinking that it was your fault, right? And want to harm yourself. Homelessness, not feeling heard or protected in the home. Perhaps runaway behavior. Decreased school performance and dropout. How do you focus in school if you're being abused? It may cause decreased school performance. It may cause someone to drop out of school. Criminal behavior and violent offenses. People may want to hurt others because somebody hurt them. They don't respect other people. Nobody respected them when they were little. Eating disorders, including bulimia and obesity. Food is sometimes the only thing survivors have control and power over, because their power is taken from them when they're little. Diseases brought on by stress and anxiety. We know now, research now shows that many diseases can be brought on by stress and anxiety, strokes, right? And other diseases. Even suicidal thoughts. So those are some of the long-term physical and emotional consequences of child sexual abuse. And if we think that childhood trauma doesn't affect adults, all we need to do is go sit in a courtroom, go to visit a prison or a hospital for that matter. Childhood trauma can cause someone to hurt someone else, and it can bring on disease because of anxiety and stress, and it could affect people's health, their relationships. It could affect the safety of our community. And we cannot think for 1 minute that this global health crisis, child sexual abuse, doesn't affect children, and because it does.
Yeah, you actually kind of answered my final question, which was, how does childhood trauma from sexual abuse impact people in adulthood? And you pretty much summed it up just now. Go ahead if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I just think, we all have to do our part in, being patient and mindful around children, and especially during this global health crisis. Many children may be experiencing secondary trauma from the adults in their lives. I think this is something we have to consider. The topic of COVID is a big topic for little hearts and young minds. Children may be very overwhelmed from listening to the adults in their personal lives constantly talk about COVID and the dangers. I can promise you that most conversations I have with adults is around the topic of COVID. So can you imagine what children and those who have been abused are overhearing? This could silence them even more when it comes to disclosure. And children are watching and listening to us. They are. And they're depending on us as adults to recognize signs. And they're also relying on us to keep them safe from sexual abuse. And we as adults need to be aware of the signs. We may, I can tell you, according to experts in this field of child protection, we may not see the real effects of COVID on children for many years. And if we think that this pandemic isn't causing children who have been sexually abused to be further traumatized, we are just sadly mistaken. Children in this pandemic, without being abused, are most likely experiencing fear, anxiety, confusion, some stress, fear of dying, fear of somebody in their life dying. Now compound that with a child who's experienced the trauma of child sexual abuse. Can you imagine that? And we have to take this very seriously, but there are things that we can do, and we can get educated in prevention. We can talk to our children, let them express their fears and their anxieties. I saw a video the other day of a little boy singing. It warmed my heart. He was singing about COVID and the fears that he had. Really, as parents and adults, encourage our children to talk about what is making them afraid, and whether they draw it or write it or sing it. They need to get out some of these anxieties that they're feeling. That would be a very healthy thing for them. And then, please get educated in sexual abuse prevention, because it's preventable.
Indeed. Running out of time, but we have a lot of comments and questions. I want to get through as many as possible. Philip Trott, a comment: if you haven't done SCARS training, please do. It's such an eye-opener. I was so naive about what grooming looked like. Even if you aren't a teacher, coach, etc., you should take it. Child protection is a community thing. Katora Houghton, Parent Chiefs, asking, is there any plan to offer SCARS training to teenagers? We have some interested teen volunteers who are 15 but cannot do training until 16. Any suggestions for alternatives?
Yeah, so I would say reach out to the Coalition for the Protection of Children. Kelly and Rachel and their team are doing an amazing job with a new training training they've been offering for over a year called Child Safety Matters. And perhaps they can offer something. This training is not a SCARS training that we developed. So the policy is between 16 to 18, you must have parental permission, and you can come into our SCARS training rooms. But below 16, I would reach out to the Coalition because they are offering this training. I know they're in the public school system right up until graduation on child safety matters. So that's what I would say for that age.
All right. Nachika Trott's asking, what is Bermuda's stats on child abuse?
Well, that's an interesting question. In 2017, SCARS partnered with the wonderful Bermuda Health Council, Ricky Brathwaite and his team over there. We had provided the Bermuda Health Council with a 1-hour awareness presentation, and they asked us how they could help. This was, like I said, 4 years ago. And we wanted to know how prevalent sexual abuse was. I can tell you that we had spoken to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of adult survivors in the 6 years or 5 years that we had been providing our training. And when we did this, presentation over there. And so we knew there were a lot of survivors in our country. So we teamed up with them, and they had a wonderful person over there named Tara Hines, who was very skilled in community surveys through Johns Hopkins. And so she helped us and the Bermuda Health Council partner with us to send out a community survey to the people that we had trained at that point in 2017. We've been training from 2012 to 2017. So we have a database of every name of people who've been trained in SCARS. And so they suggested that I send out an email to let people know that this survey is going to be coming, that's going to ask them if they've ever been sexually abused. The one thing about sexual abuse, it's very shameful and it's very silencing. So it's a difficult question to ask because some people want to know who else is going to know this.
Right.
So we sent this survey out, but I sent a cover letter out and I said, this is your choice. You do not have to take this training if you don't want to. But the only way we're going to know how many people have been abused in our country, people in our community, is to ask the question. And so we sent it out. At the time, there were 6,000 names in our database, approximately 6,000. 5,000 people received it. There were about 1,000 undeliverables due to spam and email changes and human error putting it in their email address in our database. Anyway, 5,000 people received it. Very quickly, over 700 respondents had said that they had been sexually molested by their 18th birthday. They knew the definition of sexual abuse. They had all done our training. And that equated, based on our adult population, to 1 in 3. It's not Bermudians. It was residents or people who had been trained in SCARS. But I can tell you that that number did not surprise our SCARS team. And now it's in the thousands of stories that I have heard of those who have been sexually abused.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. But the good news is those numbers are going to go way up through education, because education is power and sexual abuse is preventable.
All right. I want to get through. We're almost out of time. Got a couple more questions for you. Arthur C. Phillips, do you feel that laws in Bermuda should be changed in order to protect children?
Oh, most definitely. And I can tell you that we have a wonderful Attorney General in this country, the Honorable Kathy Lynn Simmons, who I have the utmost respect for, and our team does, because we have seen laws changing in the last few years. They are strengthening. I mean, can we do a better job? Yes. But I have seen, Sex Offender Management Act, and many, other legislation that has come in the last few years. The next legislation we want to see is that every youth serving organization that takes care of children must do prevention training and must implement a best practice code of conduct, including a safe social media policy and a safe travel policy and a safe transportation policy and a reporting policy. We want to see it go beyond just the training. We want to see really policies being mandated for any organization that opens their doors to our precious children of Bermuda.
Indeed. Nachika Trot has another question. What is SCAR's position on a public child abuse register?
This is something that we have thought about. We're not going to know who's a danger to children unless we know who's a danger to children. Okay. And so, I know all the pros and cons to that, and we're very aware of those pros and cons. But I believe that any youth serving organization that takes care of children should have access to who is a danger and a risk to children. We do not want people working at youth serving organizations that are sexually attracted to children. That's a risk. It's a risk to children. It's a risk to the community. It's a risk to the organization. And so, I think that it can be a tiered level. If we don't have the best, most efficient, the most impactful healing program at Westgate, where convicted child sex offenders go, and if we are not, having when they get out, be managed first they have to be healed inside, right? We have to think of Westgate almost like a hospital. We want to get them better. We want them to take control of the thoughts that they have in their mind. We want them to surround themselves with support. We want to give them tools that will help them when these thoughts come. And we want them to be able to get to a place to say, I have this issue and I need help and I can't be with children. I can't live with children. I can't work with children.
Indeed. One last question before we wrap it up. Sean Smith's asking, what is SCAR's definition of a child, and do you have child-on-child sexual exploitation?
Okay, the first question, a child is, any child is under the age of 18. Between 16 and 18, you're still considered a child. And so, but for the law, it's children who are under the age of 16 for consent. But in our view, children cannot consent to sex. But now, thanks to Kathy Lynn Simmons and her team at the Attorney General's team, if you sexually abuse a child and you're in a person in a position of trust between the ages of 16 and 18, you will be held responsible for that. So 16 is the age of consent, but you can't vote at 17, right? You can't drink at 17. You can't drive a car at 17. So there are certain things that you're not able to do. Well, we believe you should not, be able to engage in sexual behavior until you become an adult at 18. Because if we say that it's okay, then it's going to give people over the age of 18 permission to do that with a 15-year-old. I think we have to be very careful. Now, I will tell you, I lost my virginity at 15. So, and it wasn't from it wasn't my first with a boyfriend. It wasn't abuse. And the man that abused me when I was an 8-year-old little girl, I don't remember every detail. I remember him touching me, but I don't remember any other detail. So it could have been before that. But I do know that we have to think about children and how much they understand between the ages of 15 and 17, the consequences of what happens. And we cannot give permission for adults to have sex with 15. It's just wrong in our eyes. And then the second question that he asked was about child on child. Now, children will explore. It's very normal. If a child has not been provided with appropriate boundaries and child, protection, education, right? And child safety and, body safety, then they may explore on another child. That doesn't make them an abuser. We know that abuse is when one exerts power over another. So if a child is having sexual contact with another child and the other child is saying stop, and that child continues, that really crosses over to bullying behavior.
Yeah.
And sex offenders are bullies who use sex as a means of obtaining power. And so we know that we need to pay attention to bullying behavior. We know that we need to really talk to our children early and often about body safety, about inappropriate touch. If the children aren't receiving that education, they don't know when their behavior has crossed the line. And so it's not about, they're not an abuser. They're just someone who hasn't had any education on, okay, I'm having these feelings, which are very normal, and I need to do something with these sexual feelings. Indeed. And so, right. So if they haven't received that education, we can't call them abusers, children. We just need to educate them so they know what's appropriate and what's inappropriate.
Debi Rivers, this was an extremely informative and a helpful conversation. And hopefully people will be knocking down the doors of SCARS to actually take the 3-hour training. It seems like a lot more needs to be done to protect our children. And so I think I speak for many when we say we're grateful for the work that you and your organization are doing. I have so many more questions regarding specific organizations, not necessarily incidents. And on top of this, so we hope to have you back sometime this year to continue the discussion, because these conversations, you can't have too many of them.
So true. Thank you for the opportunity. If you are someone that needs to reach out and want to take part in our training, just go to our website, scarsbermuda.com. Click on the link that says Get Trained. You can sign up for a community session, or you can organize a private session for your team. We're happy to do that. We work morning, noon, night, evenings, and weekends. So reach out to us.
Thanks so much, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, Jamel and Jackie. Love you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, found that helpful, make sure you give a thumbs up, a love. Thank you so much to Debi Rivers and SCARS for trusting our platform for that conversation. We'll be right back with the Daily Play and Daily Inspiration.
Tune in to the Full 100 Radio every Tuesday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Bermuda time as we bring you the love, romance, sexiness with nighttime jams. Only on your station for conversations and entertainment. The Full 100 Radio. Download the app, available for Android and Apple devices.
All right, welcome back to the big show. Thanks again to Debi Rivers from SCARS for that conversation. And folks, when I say share the link and retweet it, it's not for us. It's for Bermuda. It's for our community. There's so much value in conversations like that. So I really hope you do. Today's Daily Play, everyone, it's a Bermuda Day question. So here's the question. Help Jackie out, folks. Who holds the record for the Bermuda Day half marathon?
Oh God. I have no clue. I can't even guess.
Yeah, really?
Does anybody know? No.
Bermuda, who holds the record for the Bermuda Day half marathon?
And I can't see the comments, so I can't even cheat.
Somebody got it one time. Chris Estwanick.
Oh, he does, isn't it?
Everybody's got Chris Estwanick, actually. Yep, Chris Estwanick. So Chris Estwanick is the record holder. In 2015, Chris Estwanick set a new Bermuda Day record after completing the race in 1 hour, 7 minutes, 46 seconds after beginning in St. George's. In 2008, his first Bermuda Day race, he set the record out of Somerset with a time of 1 hour, 8 minutes, 25 seconds. So yes, it is Chris Estwanick. Any final thoughts on today's episode, Jack?
It was a good episode, slightly triggering, but we're going to get this conversation going and get the information out there to protect our children.
Indeed.
We really do.
Indeed. Like I said, very helpful information in there, and I really hope that people share these kinds of conversations and take the take the conversation beyond the daily hour and continue them in whatever setting they should be in. Here's your daily inspiration. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. Steve Jobs. All righty. On that note, unfortunately, we're going to tell you thanks while we out. Again, to our partners, Medical House One Communications, Lindos, for ensuring that we're able to do this with you on a daily basis. As always, we appreciate you, we love you, and we thank you for making us part of your daily routine. If all goes well, we'll be back to do this again with you tomorrow. She's Jackie Lambert. I'm Jamal Hartman. My friends, make it a great day. Peace.